Hi, this instructional video will be on dividing polynomials. In order to be able to divide polynomials, we first need to remember how to do long division with integers. So the first problem we'll look at is just a quick review of how to divide 2,563 by 6. Recall that we first take this number and see if it'll go into the first digit, and if it doesn't, then into the second digit. So if we consider 25 divided by 6, we know that 6 will go into 25 4 times. So we write 4 here at the top of 5 and then multiply. 4 times 6 is 24. Then we subtract. 25 minus 24 is 1. Then we bring down the 6. And then we divide 16 by 6. Well, if you divide 16 by 6, it goes in twice. 2 times 6 is 12. And then we subtract. 16 minus 12 being 4. And lastly, we bring down our 3 and divide 6 into 43. 43 divided by 6, we know will go in 7 times because 6 times 7 is 42. So we multiply 7 times 6, bring that, write that as 42, and then we subtract. And you can see here we are going to have a remainder of 1. So to practice understanding how to write our answer for polynomial division, we're going to put plus with our remainder over our divisor. So that you'll get used to that terminology, let me do a quick review. We divide our divisor into our dividend. The answer we get is our quotient. So what we'll be doing is the quotient plus our remainder over, and remember, just like over here, we did the remainder over the 6, which was our divisor. So it's going to be plus the remainder over the divisor. So when we use this terminology, be familiar with that. So next what I'm going to do is show you, do a quick review of how to divide by a polynomial. So if we consider this following example, you can see that we have 3 terms in our numerator divided by 1 term in our denominator. What I need you to understand is if our denominator, our divisor, is 3rs, it really means we're dividing each and every term by 3rs. Feel free to pause the video at any time to keep up. And then we would simplify each fraction here to get our answer. So recognize that whenever we have multiple variables, exponents represent repeated multiplication. So you're not going to have to do this every time. I'm just kind of reviewing the skill of dividing exponents. And what you should remember here is that we would cancel any terms that are repeated in the numerator and the denominator, because r divided by r equals 1. Here, s divided by s equals 1. And then 6 divided by 3 is 2. If we get a whole number when we divide, it goes in the numerator, meaning we could think of this as a fraction. You don't need to necessarily do this part, but we can make anything a fraction by putting it over under an understood 1. And then here, our 3's would cancel, r's would cancel, and s's would cancel, leaving s. And lastly, our s's and a set of r's would cancel. 9 divided by 3 is 3. So we'd have 2rs plus s minus 3r. I'm going to give you another one and ask you to try this one independently. So when I write this one down, please pause the video and try it. 3a squared b plus 6a cubed b squared plus 18ab all over 3ab. Go ahead and pause the video at this point and try this one. And this is the final answer you should get. Alright, so I'm now going to give you the steps for long division of polynomials. So what this means is what we're going to have to do next is be able to multiply something that looks like x squared minus 5x, so notice this is a trinomial, divided by x plus 3. Well, this does not work the same way as it does with monomial division, meaning we're dividing by one term. Here we're dividing by two terms. So I'm going to put the instructions up here and ask you to pause the video and write it down. So notice up here it says think back to long division from 3rd grade, and that's exactly what we did with the very first example in the video. You have to evaluate how many times the divisor goes into the dividend and put that number on top. Then we multiply that number by the divisor and put the result under the dividend, and then we subtracted, bringing that number down, and then also the next number, and we repeat till we've used all the numbers in the dividend. So hit pause to get these 3 steps down. Alright, so next we're going to go ahead and multiply x squared minus 5x minus 24 by x plus 3. Remember that the number on the bottom is our divisor. We divide that into our dividend, which will be the numerator always. So we're trying to find the quotient here. So the way this process works is just like I did before. We're going to take our first term and then divide by, in this case, our first term in our divisor. We only divide by the x, never the x plus 3. So what you're going to see me do is come over here and kind of write a running list like I did when I divided to begin with. So we take x squared and we divide by the first term in our divisor, x. Well, this is going to require us to remember our laws of exponents, which say that we subtract, or remember that that's x times x divided by x, where 1 would cancel, leaving x. Since we divide and get x, we're going to put it over here because it's x to the first power. I'm going to put it over the term that has x to the first power. See how I line those up? And then I'm going to distribute the x to both terms. So now we're on that second step where we multiply and write it under here. So x times x is x squared. X times 3 is positive 3x. But remember, our next step is to subtract. So you'll hear me say over and over, draw your line, change your signs. So a positive changes to a negative changes to a plus. Now we subtract. So x squared minus x squared should cancel. If you have divided correctly, that will always happen. Negative 5x minus 3x is negative 8x. So be careful about your integers with signs. If it's negative, that means you're subtracting. So type in negative 5 minus 3 if you're not good with adding and subtracting integers in your calculator. So negative 8x, and then we bring down the next term, just like we did with numbers. Bring down the negative 24, so always keep your sign straight. And then you repeat the process. So now we're going to take this negative 8x and divide by x. So we're starting the process over, similar to how we would take the number down here with numbers and divide again. We're going to do it again, but with these terms. So negative 8x divided by, again, the first term in your divisor. You'll always divide by the x, never the 3. Your x's would cancel, leaving negative 8, and then we write it up top with the sign. So if it's negative, it'll be a minus sign. If that was a positive 8, we would put plus 8. And then we repeat the process of distributing. So negative 8 times x is negative 8x. Remembering that if you've done this right, you'll get the same number here. Negative 8 times positive 3 is negative 24. Then we draw our lines, change our signs, and simplify. Negative 8x plus 8x is 0, and negative 24 plus 24 is 0. So that means our final answer is x minus 8. That's our quotient, x minus 8. Now what that should mean is that in your calculator, you could go to y1. Remember, you've learned a lot about how to check your answers. And you can type in your dividend. And then in y2, you should be able, so I'll put up here dividend. DIV for dividend. And then over here, I'll put up here that you should be able to put in your divisor times your quotient. So if you put in x plus 3 times x minus 8 and check your table, it should match. So again, that was the divisor times your quotient. Let me make this clear up here. This was our dividend. Okay, so you can check your answer in your calculator to make sure that it matches up. So your answer here was x minus 8. Now, I highly suggest, if you need to go ahead and rewatch this segment before we try the next one. Make sure you understand the process, because in this next one we're going to get a remainder. Okay, for the next one, and you're going to see your problem represented a little bit differently here, just because I want you to see a variety of ways that you could recognize that the operation you must complete is division. So if you notice here, we actually have a polynomial h cubed minus 11h plus 28 times h minus 4 to the negative 1 power. So please recall your negative exponent law, which said if you have a to the negative 1, then it's really 1 over a to the positive 1, meaning we can move it to the bottom and it changes signs. Okay? So recognize that anytime you see anything to the negative 1 power, it's another representation of division, because if I move just this part here, the h minus 4, to the bottom, my exponent will now become positive. Okay, so this is just another representation of division when you see a negative exponent. So let's set this one up. We have our divisor of h minus 4 into h cubed, but now we have something that we're going to need to do in addition. Please recognize that in descending order we have a cubic term, but then it jumps to a linear term and a constant term. If you recognize, the term that is missing is our quadratic term. So we're missing a 0h squared. So we do have to account for that term, or we won't have a space to put something in our answer and we'll get the wrong value, wrong quotient. So make sure that you always pay attention, and if it's cubed, then you should have a cubic, quadratic, linear, constant. So we need 4 terms, even though you only see 3. So we're going to repeat the process again. We take the first term in our dividend, h cubed, and divide by h. That gives us h squared. See, because we have this h squared, we need somewhere to write it over. So now that we have this 0h squared term, we'll be able to do that. So h squared will go above 0h squared. Repeat the process and distribute. H squared times h is h cubed. H squared times negative 4 is minus 4h squared. Next, we're going to draw our lines, change our signs. Remember, this should always cancel. 0h squared plus 4h squared is 4h squared. Bring down the next term and repeat. taking again this first term and dividing by the first term in our divisor again. So if we take 4h squared and divide by h, we get 4h. It's positive, so I'm going to put up here plus 4h because it's positive. And then multiply again. 4h times h is 4h squared. 4h times negative 4 is negative 16h. We're going to draw our line and change our signs. These will cancel out. Negative 11h plus 16h is 5h. Bring down the next term and repeat the process. 5h divided by h. Now you don't have to keep coming over here to write this list. I'm doing this so you'll understand where these terms up here are coming from. Our h's would cancel, leaving 5. So we'll line up our positive 5 plus 5 here above the 28 and then distribute. 5 times h is 5h. 5 times negative 4 is negative 20. We draw our line, change our signs, and our remainder is 48 because we can no longer divide by h. If we were to try to do 48 divided by h, we could not simplify that. So with our remainder, again, we put plus, then our remainder over our divisor, h minus 4. Alright, so we want to write our final quotient here as h squared plus 4h plus 5 plus 48 divided by h minus 4. Now, if we had a negative constant here that was left over, then we would, instead of plus 48, we would put minus 48. So let me show you again how we can type this in our calculator to check our answer. And how you type it in is very important because if you make any mistakes, you'll get the wrong, you won't be checking it right. So remember what I said is to first take in y1 and put in your dividend. That's the part under this this divide bar. It's also your numerator of your fraction. So we're going to type in, but of course replacing h with x. X to the third, I'm sorry, it's a little hard to see. X to the third minus 11x plus 28. Alright, and what we want to do is now put in our divisor, h minus 4, as x minus 4, times our quotient. But it has a remainder this time, so we want to pay attention to how we type it in. X squared plus 4x plus 5 plus 48 divided by, but we have to have an extra set of parentheses around our the divisor in our remainder. So if it's 48 divided by x minus 4, make sure you do parentheses around the x minus 4, then another set of parentheses to close off the entire quotient, okay? So I'll go back here to the beginning so you can see what it looks like. That was x minus 4, which was the number here on the outside, times this. So this times this should give us this. And then if we hit second graph and you go to your table, you'll recognize that the number should be the same. You may very well see an error message, but as long as all your other numbers are correct, that's fine. And the reason is we have a restriction. Our x value can't be 4 in our denominator, in our calculator at least. If h was 4, 4 minus 4 would be 0, and then 48 divided by 0, you get an error because division by 0 is not possible. So it's expected that sometimes you'll see that error message when you have the opposite of this value. But don't worry, that doesn't mean your answer is not correct. This is the correct answer. Alright, so if at any point you need to review any of this, just feel free to watch the video again or watch any portion of it you need to. Good luck.